So, let's talk about the economist Joseph Schumpeter. He's the guy who gave us this incredible lens to understand the chaotic, thrilling, and let's be honest, totally unpredictable nature of modern capitalism.
And to really get what he's about, let's start with a puzzle. Why is it that huge, dominant companies can just vanish? I mean, one minute they're on top of the world, an absolute institution, and the next, they're basically a trivia question.
Think about it. Blockbuster Video, right? It was the weekend ritual for so many of us. And then, almost overnight, it was gone, completely replaced by Netflix. Or Kodak, the company that practically invented photography for the masses, just totally eclipsed by Instagram. What is this incredible, giant toppling force at work? Now, for the longest time, traditional economics looked at events like these and just called them external shocks. You know, weird things happening outside an otherwise stable system. But Joseph Schumpeter came along, saw all this constant churn and said, nope, you've got it all wrong. This isn't a bug in the system. This is the system. It's the engine. To really appreciate just how radical his idea was, we first need to understand the old map he was arguing against, this picture of an economy that was always in a state of perfect balance. The big idea back then was something called the circular flow. I want you to picture the economy as a perfectly calm lake. It's a system that's always seeking balance, or equilibrium. Sure, an outside force might make some ripples, but they always settle down, and a new, calm balance is found.
So you've got this huge difference, right? The old view was static. It saw the economy as just passively reacting to things. But Schumpeter's view was dynamic. He argued that the most powerful changes weren't coming from the outside at all. They were explosive forces from within the system, constantly driving it toward disruption, not balance.
Okay, so if the engine of change is internal, what is it? Who's turning the key? Well, this brings us right to Schumpeter's core insight.
He was adamant that capitalism's true nature wasn't about managing a steady state. The real story, the whole point, was its relentless internal engine of change, kind of like a speedboat churning up that calm lake we talked about right from the inside. So who's driving that speedboat? The entrepreneur. But hold on. Because for Schumpeter, this isn't just anyone who owns a business. No way. The entrepreneur is a radical innovator, someone who shatters the existing way of doing things by introducing what he called new combinations.
And these new combinations could be anything. A totally new product like the first iPhone, a revolutionary new method of production like the assembly line. It could be opening up a market that never existed before, finding a new source for materials, or completely reorganizing an entire industry. Think about what Amazon did to retail.
And when these entrepreneurs actually unleash their innovations, well, that's when we get to the big reveal. This is Schumpeter's most famous concept, and it's the answer to that puzzle we started with.
What's so wild about this is that these innovations, they don't just politely add something new to the economy. No, they are like seismic events. They violently reshape the economy's entire structure from the inside out.
He gave this process an absolutely brilliant name: creative destruction. He called that the essential fact about capitalism. It's this perpetual storm of innovation that is constantly destroying the old companies, old jobs, old ways of doing things, in the very same act of creating the new.
And the effects are profound. For every winner, there's a loser. For every Netflix that rises, a blockbuster has to fall. It's a brutal process, sure, but he argued it's a vital one, and it's all driven by the chase for profit. Change doesn't happen smoothly. It happens in these turbulent, disruptive waves. I mean, this was a totally revolutionary way of looking at the economy.
So the big question is, how? How did Schumpeter see all of this when so many of his peers were completely missing it? Well, the answer really lies in his unique intellectual toolkit. This quote from him tells you everything you need to know. Schumpeter wasn't interested in picking a side or defending some rigid dogma. His goal was just pure, unadulterated understanding. He wanted to synthesize, not to win. This way of thinking has a name: methodological pluralism. All it really means is that he believed the economy is just too messy, too complex, too human to be squeezed into one single theory. To him, trying to do that was just plain foolish. He saw it like a true economist needs a whole toolkit, not just one hammer. Of course, you need your theory and your stats, but he argued you also have to understand economic history to know how we got here. And you have to get the economic sociology of it all, the human behaviors that numbers can never fully explain. Without all four pieces, you're only seeing a tiny sliver of the real picture.
Okay, so why are we talking about an economist who was writing a century ago? Well, it's because his ideas feel more relevant today than maybe ever before.
Seriously? Schumpeter basically gave us the vocabulary we use to talk about our modern world. Anytime you hear a startup founder talking about disrupting an industry, that's pure Schumpeter. His framework perfectly explains the constant rise and fall of tech giants and the whole role of venture capital, which is basically just funding those risky new combinations you talked about.
When you boil it all down, it's like this. Other economists gave us a map of a world that stood still. Schumpeter did something way more valuable. He gave us a map for a world that never, ever stops remaking itself.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Schumpeter's model really hinged on these brilliant individual entrepreneurs. But what happens now when innovation becomes institutionalized inside massive corporate R&D labs? Or even more, what happens when it's automated by AI? What on earth does the next wave of creative destruction even look like?